There's Morgan.
Great. Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for attending this evening's Parklet Outreach program. This is an event, this is the second outreach program that the city has hosted. My name is Christina Feller. I'm here as a member of the Parklet Working Group. I chair Sausalito Planning Commission. I would also like to introduce Commissioner Luxembourg, also a member of the working group. If you can just raise your hand, Commissioner. Very good, there we go. Dan Hortert, who's our interim director for CDD. And Ali Iqbal, our engineer from DPW. And Morgan Pierce, the president of Sausalito Beautiful. Unfortunately, not with us here this evening is the Director of Public Works, Kevin McGowan. He had a schedule conflict. He is at a TAM meeting. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you for being here this evening. Dan, if we could start sharing the slides. I'm going to go ahead and start walking everybody through where we are and what the purpose of this evening is. This is a proposed parklet and outdoor dining program that was developed at the request of the City Council at their October City Council hearing. This is on the heels of the first Parklet Outreach event last summer. And in October, the working group was formed. City Council had directed staff to convene a working group with the Commission and Sausalito Beautiful for this proposed Parklet program. We have included outdoor dining in this program because in many cases here in Sausalito, both Parklet and outdoor dining have been requested. So it's important that we look at these things together. So let's move to the next slide, Dan. This is just a quick timeline to orientate everybody here this evening. And as I had mentioned, last June, we had our first virtual community forum, this being our second. In July, DPW had restriped a portion of Caledonia as a beta program to see if that outdoor dining along Caledonia would be a success. And most of you are familiar with that. In June, the Planning Commission assigned a task force for the sole purpose of benchmarking parklets and different programs in similar communities to Sausalito. And we submitted our criteria and a list to the City Council for benchmarking purposes. If any of you had a chance to look at our proposed program, it's a 45-page document. That benchmark list is included as an attachment in that document. The link is also available on the same site that you got this Zoom link. So I hope you've had a chance to look at that. In October, at the October 12th City Council hearing, they requested staff to convene this working group and the members that I've just announced to you and introduced to you this evening. And then in March, we submitted our draft proposed Parklet and outdoor dining program to the City Council. And actually in May of this year, last month, on May 24th, the City Council was actually provided a very similar presentation to what you're hearing this evening. So if we move to the next slide, this is really the opportunity to make comment to that proposed program. So again, just to orientate you a little bit in terms of what the scope and the remit of this working group is. So we ensure that we're talking about the same scope of work here. So we drafted the guidelines recommending not just locations, for which we've identified 8 different locations or neighborhoods that are conducive for parklet and outdoor dining, but we also wanted to look at the density for both the indoor dining and the parklet situations to ensure that we have a cohesive citywide approach. We've come up with proposed parklet designs and materials. I'm going to fall short of calling them an actual template. What we did not want to do is we did not want to restrict an owner of a business here in Sausalito by being too prescriptive. However, we have provided a rather elaborate checklist, which Commissioner Luxembourg and Ali Iqbal will walk us through a little bit later in this presentation, so that the parklet has certain parameters. We're not too restrictive so that your parklet or proposed parklet is still reflective of your business, and we are not overstepping that line and being too prescriptive to you. There are a lot of different issues, of course, to consider in parklets, including safety, including resiliency of the materials and the longevity of that parklet, sight lines, both for pedestrian, vehicular, and so on. We have identified the governance, the process, and the procedure for achieving the approval. The goal here is to fast track your application and submission. If you meet all the criteria on the checklist, then it's a fast track approval. If an owner elects to do something more elaborate or work outside the guidelines that have been identified, then it will trigger a regular design review permit. But I believe as we walk you through this, you will see that there's quite a lot of room for your own design idea and aesthetic to reflect your business. We have also benchmarked fees and recommendations for fee scale to City Council. We have been consulting with the finance director. We have consulted with the chamber. We have consulted with some of the experts inside the city, and we have benchmarked that against other similar cities. We have defined the occupancy and how to define that, and permanent dining versus seasonal dining, and any impacts to the existing parking inventory, the hours and days of operation. So it's quite a large scope that we were looking at, and we were trying to strike that right balance so we're not inadvertently being punitive to any business, but encouraging thoughtful design in our city. Let's move to the next slide, Dan. So this evening, again, just to orientate everybody, and we'll keep reminding you of what we're really looking for. This is really your opportunity to comment on this program that we put in front of you. The last public outreach, of course, was more theoretically or philosophically how people felt about parklets and where they were appropriate, or what considerations should be taken into account. All of that feedback, this working group took into account as we were developing exactly what we are proposing in front of you this evening. But we really need your input. Many of you are business owners. Some of you are residents or in neighborhoods where parklets or outdoor dining exist or might exist. So we really do need your feedback and your input to make sure that a final document is viable, it's sustainable, it's resilient, and works for Sausalito. We need to finalize the program, and we believe we're close to doing that. And then, of course, we would inform the City Council of any final findings from the community and report back to them as well. So we'll be moving into public comment here shortly as soon as we can get you orientated to some of the details. So why don't we go ahead and move forward, Dan? Okay, I'm going to hand this over to Commissioner Luxembourg. If you could take us from here and get into some of the detail, please.
Thank you, Chair Fowler. So what is a parklet? A parklet are the small public sidewalk extensions, usually in front of your business, taking over a specific parking space. They provide either active or passive use. Next slide, Dan. And then we're also talking about outdoor dining. Outdoor dining is typically located on the sidewalk, typically just outside of the building. For the sake of what we're talking about under this program, very simple outdoor dining with a few tables and chairs will come under this program. If it's a much more elaborate, lots of chairs and needs a lot of reconfiguration, that would be Outdoor dining has always been allowed in Sausalito under a conditional use permit, but we've decided to simplify the process under a ministerial program so that you can come in, and if only you want a few tables and chairs, we're going to make that easy for the businesses. Next slide. So what this Parklet program is it looked at a whole bunch of different possible configurations where it can be located, basically in the commercial zones that are in Sausalito, what the requirements would be. We looked at design elements and amenities, as I mentioned, outdoor dining. Later in the presentation, we'll talk about fees and the permit process. Next slide, Dan. So what are some of the basic requirements? So most of these things look at safety and sort of common sense type of things. We want to maintain a 5-foot sidewalk clearance between the parklet and the building, or between the parklet and outdoor dining. We want to make sure a wheelchair can get by and can get into the parklet, which means that it has to be of the proper slope. We want to make sure that the parklets are maintained. We want to ensure that they don't damage any utilities, and that there's a safety barrier between the parklets and the street. And we also want to make sure that the parklet is not so close to a corner that a car could not see, or a bicyclist could not see around that. We also, in the program document that Chair Feller mentioned, we looked at overhead canopies. Those are not required, but if you do have one, it has to be a certain height off the ground. We're encouraging people to heat the parklets with heaters, but if you do that, there are certain requirements for the fire department as far as safety on the heat lamps. We've allowed for signage up to 6 square feet. We're requiring some sort of landscaping, but a little bit of landscaping, 12 square feet per parklet, and on a plan of what that landscaping would be. We have some provisions for overhead lighting, and then there's some specifications for the railings that we'd have to make sure that it's safe from the street to the parklet. Next slide. And this, and we did this both in words in the documents, and then there's some basic diagrams. This is a parklet that's parallel to the street. We also have one that's perpendicular, and there's a similar graphic for outdoor dining. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Ali, who's going to go through some more of the requirements. Next slide.
Next slide. Thank you, Jeffrey. So how Christina had mentioned earlier that we had done some beta testing on a few of the parklets that are already existing. So in doing the observations, we really just touched on 4 issues, one being drainage, maintenance, general compliance to the requirements, and then the conversion from the previously approved to more permanent, and how big of an impact that would be. So that's us doing some measuring and some site evaluations. Next slide. So if I go clockwise, starting from the top left, that is a drainage issue, and that's what we have seen on Caledonia. And you can see, if you look closely, there is a drain box there, but in further inspection, that was full of food scraps and garbage, so it wasn't functional, and additionally, that was not at the low spot. So you can see that water was not going in there, it was just flooding the area. They had to pull all of their chairs and tables out and put them back into the restaurant. This middle top, you can see that the barrels are really intruding into the sidewalk. You know, in addition to the display table on the right side, with the barrels intruding, it really constricts the walkway. You know, and it's not that big of a deal if we just ask them to, you know, kind of shift the barrels into the parklet area and maybe take away the table to open it back up. On the right side, you can see just some maintenance that the storm drain can get clogged if it's not maintained. So just some brief cleaning would clear that up. Again, not a major issue. So this one on the bottom, you can see that one of our requirements would be for the sidewalk dining would be up against the wall of the building, which they're doing. But we would request that they do, or they provide just a table of two, because either of these gentlemen pulling out from the table would push pedestrians into the roadway. That is not safe. Even if there's a server there, again, they would push the pedestrians out into the sidewalk. That's not what we want. So we want to maintain that 5-foot clearance there. And then this last one is just kind of for show. This is we found in Sausalito as well, and maybe that was just, I don't know what that was. So just general compliance. Next. So we have prepared an application. So we would want you to, obviously submit the encroachment application, permits, submit plans that would show utilities, some of the neighboring properties, dimensions, and show that it's still an ADA conformance. Some of the material that we would want you to submit are colors, and some material, colors, and then material for the fencing, and that type of information. The staff will determine its completeness and your payment insurance. They'll send it out to the planning division, the building department, public works, and then Southern Marin Fire would also take a look at it for review. And then once the permit's issued, staff will do a site inspection. Next. And for the checklist, we kind of really narrowed. I mean, Christina was already saying that it was like a 45-page report that we have done. We've kind of narrowed it down into a 2-pager. These are kind of the highlights that we would really want you to stick to for sidewalks. The 3 big ones are the tables for 2, like I mentioned earlier, that will be placed against the adjacent frontage of the building, and to main ADA access with the 5-foot clear. The parklets are a little bit more involved, but kind of the same idea with the 5 feet clear. We want to see the color board, your material that you're using. There's a requirement for signage if you're putting that on any of the rails, the drainage plan. Jeffrey mentioned planting. So those type of stuff we would want you to submit so we can review. Next. And some of these are the proposed fees that the city is considering. I don't need to read them off to you, but it's just the application, the issuance fee, tech support, street maintenance. If you guys don't, if business owners don't do the maintenance and storm drains do get clogged, staff may have to go out and clean it themselves. Sewer fee, and that's an estimate, and that's something that can be talked about and discussed. Just the annual fee for the license and the meter. Next. So the next steps that we wanted to do was we wanted to take this back to City Council. We wanted to get your understanding of your thoughts on the process, any concerns that you have. Some of the codes may be changed. We'll have to look and see exactly what those are. And our understanding is that the deadline for these permitted parklets, the existing permitted parklets, are December of 2023. So we do have some time to look into it and figure it out. We'd want to collect fees. The fees were essentially supposed to be waived this month. And basically just retire the existing parklet and fee waiver and try to set up a new parklet program. Next.
Right. Thank you, Ali.
Sure.
I'm sure that this leaves a lot more questions for the community, and we welcome that. Just a couple points of clarification before we move into questions here. when we were beta testing, one of the things that we were looking at very keenly, and the reason that we went around to beta test random different existing parklets and situations, is that we wanted to develop a program that did not inadvertently create a hardship for existing businesses with existing parklets and such. So the program that you see in front of you is something where small tweaks here and there might be required to bring it into conformance. So all parklets and outdoor dining are consistent throughout Sausalito, but these are generally minor. And we really looked very hard at this because we did not want to create a situation for any of our businesses that would be inadvertently punitive to you. So that's what you see in front of you here. I also wanted to welcome any further comments from Morgan Pierce, the president of Sausalito Beautiful, who did spend quite a bit of time on materials and the landscaping elements, if you'd like to add anything else.
I really don't have much to add. The team here has done an excellent job at depicting, I think, what our intent was in working out a reasonable solution. We thought that was applicable across all the different neighborhoods, different business types, and different configurations that might be encountered. I would be happy to be available for any questions that may come up, but I think you did a great job, so thank you.
Great, thank you, Morgan. So why don't we go ahead and move into public comment at this time. Dan is going to help manage time. We'll offer 3 minutes per speaker since we do have time here, and we will try to get as many questions from everybody first and then try to respond to it and get more into a dialogue or into more detail as necessary. So if we don't answer you right away, that is why. So to raise your hand for public comment, you can do so in the Zoom application. You can also press *9 on your phone, and I'll go ahead and call on any member of the public with a raised hand in the order that I see it on my screen. So if it looks like it's a different order on your screen, please don't be alarmed. I see one hand so far. Mr. Rex, welcome this evening. Thank you for being here. Dan,
Hi,
if you can
yeah.
help us.
Can you hear me
Floor
okay?
We can.
Oh,
Welcome.
thank you. Yeah, hi. Glad to participate. As an architect in town, we know about parklets and outdoor dining. And basically, parklets are replacing parallel parking spaces with a food service use. And I think this was an okay solution in town and elsewhere as a temporary measure during COVID. But I think they're problematic to make them permanent. I don't think they're desirable spaces really that enjoyable. They're very, by nature, are really long and narrow. I think it's a safety question that you put diners so close to travel lane. Before COVID, the city policy was to have no structures within 3 feet of a travel lane. Now we're putting it right against travel lane. And I also don't think it's safe to serve food between a restaurant and diners crossing pedestrian traffic. I think that we're waiting for hot soup or hot coffee being spilled on people. It also creates congestion on the sidewalk where you have servers trying to wait in between pedestrians. The pedestrians are kind of relegated to a narrow space between the buildings and the diners. I think it definitely makes the street feel more congested and crowded. And I think to the extent you make it more permanent, would probably make it worse because people are going to want canopies, are going to want to have heaters. And the bigger it gets, the more the street will feel narrow and crowded. So I actually think we should be discouraging parklets on a permanent basis unless there's no alternative. But in most cases, I think there is an alternative, and that's outdoor dining, which is already part of the zoning ordinance. And it just makes sense to put the diners next to the restaurant and put the sidewalk next to the cars, like where sidewalks belong. So if we're going to convert parallel parking spaces to a different use, I think we should be converting them to sidewalks, not dining rooms. And it'll be safer. The street will feel wider. The food service will be more convenient and safer to be able to serve food right next to the restaurant. That sort of thing works best, outdoor dining against a restaurant, when you have adjacent food service uses, like, for example, Venice Deli and Angelino's. If, instead of having a parklet, let them dine right against their building and then put the sidewalk out where the parallel parking used to be. In some instances where it's a standalone restaurant, it might feel a little awkward to detour around a single use. So maybe in some instances, a parklet would make sense. But then it's going to have to be very carefully looked at from a design standpoint, so it doesn't feel crowded. Maybe it shouldn't have an overhead
Rex.
structure, that sort of thing.
Mr.
Anyway,
Rex,
that's my input.
That's your time.
And
Thank you.
thanks for considering that.
Thank you,
thought.
Mr. X.
Mhm.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. They are noted. Appreciate you being here this evening.
Sure.
I'll move on to our next commenter, Amy Svenberg. Welcome this evening. If you could unmute yourself.
Yes,
share
thank you.
your video.
Thank you. Hi, Amy. I'm from Pojo. As you guys know, we have we've got a great outdoor dining area in front of our restaurant. And I just want to thank you guys for your work in working with parklets and outdoor dining. It has been absolutely crucial for our restaurants during these past 2 years. There's a high demand for them. There continues to be so. It is widely considered the safest place to dine. Certainly with our clientele, they're very sensitive to the needs from COVID. The one thing that I was unclear about was if this is going to apply all these new rules, if they apply to existing restaurants like Poggio, like Angelino's. We've had outdoor dining for a very long time. We certainly have. And, not one size fits all. So for Poggio to have only two tops, that would really upset a lot of my customers, and just including all of my locals. And so, I understand your points, and certainly about compliance. We do have planter boxes that block the sidewalk from the restaurants. I think we were different, but I wasn't sure if you are doing a new one size fits all for every business, including the existing ones like Poggio, which have had our outdoor dining permits for the past, since we've been open 20 years ago. And, that sewer fee of $6.41 per person can quickly add up, especially if it's an annual basis. So I know you're being sensitive to the needs of the restaurants, and you're trying to do something that's going to enhance both the community and the businesses, but these little fees do add up, and it does cause a burden on our businesses.
Thank you so much for your comments. Again, we're going to pull all comments to the end of public comment and try to respond accordingly. So thank you very much for your perspective and comments. I'll move on to the next member of our audience, and that's Teresa Ancona. Welcome, Teresa.
Thank you. So actually, I read through the proposed program, and I had a few things. So one of the things in there was going to City Council in regard to serving alcohol. If we have an ABC license, or you have an ABC license that allows you to serve outside, why are we going to City Council? Concerning heater safety, so it specifically addresses heaters next to umbrellas, but not things like under tents or canopies or roofs that might want to be considered, some kind of safety to put in there. Also, concerning parklets and colored curb zones, in one area it says it's not allowed, but then in other areas it says that's up to the discretion of city staff. That's kind of confusing. I also thought you might want to consider somewhere in there just having some kind of general requirements for like ADA, somewhere in there to have it mentioned, because it really doesn't seem to address any kind of ADA concerns in the program. Also, I kind of feel like the fees might be a little bit high and a little out of line. like the $13 per square footage is more than what most of us pay for our interior rent by square footage. And also the sewer fee, I'm not exactly sure what that would be covering. So the fees seem a little bit high and not really clear. Also, it states that it has Los Angeles County and Culver City in there. You might want to edit that out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Thank you for your comments and for reading everything in such great detail. The next member of the public I see is Vicki Nichols. Welcome, Vicki. If you could unmute and share your screen, or share your camera, I should say.
Hi, Chair Feller, excuse me. Thank you for the opportunity. I wish you had had more people on the call. It looks like just businesses and a couple of people that live in the community. I'm wondering, and I've got to admit, Teresa really beat me at reading this thoroughly. So it may be included, and if it is, I apologize. Is this proposed to be a permanent program? Is this a trial program? Living on Caledonia, the reality is that we know that and have seen firsthand that these seats are not used all the time, particularly if the weather is not good. So I think, doing permanent structures for permanent is something that I hope was taken into consideration. For instance, in Mill Valley, around their depot, they've decided that theirs are not permanent. They're more seasonal, which I think is right, so that in the winter, when people are not going to be sitting there. And I've got to say, I don't sit and look at who's sitting there constantly, but the seats are not used constantly. So also, what's going to happen in some of these instances when the program gets retired? Some businesses are using parking spaces now without permits or anything. They didn't get a parklet, but they're taking over the parking spaces for valet or whatever. Has that been considered? I hope that everyone will have to follow the rules, as my dear good neighbor drivers had to. They had to go through everything with drainage and all that, and they've created a beautiful parklet. So they paid for everything. So I hope there's some equity in that, and that I appreciate that as a good example. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Vicki. Thank you for being here tonight and for your comments. The next member of the public I see is Yoshi. Welcome, Yoshi. If you could unmute yourself. Thank you.
Hi there. Thank you. I have a few comments. One is thank you for this meeting, and I'm very thankful EDAC and the city Caledonia Street made for the parklet adjacent to my business. The 100 blocks Caledonia Street. 0 to 3 4 restaurants over there. It's not very direct impact for me, but truly bringing life on the street. And then once in a month music on it. I think it's a wonderful things to support local businesses. And what's going on pandemic right now, coming back in and out. Some people are still refuse to sit down dining inside the restaurant. I am very lucky. I do have a lot of outdoor spaces. I got the lucky permit, patios and the street side. Before pandemic, I got the permit. And then now I do have a courtyard dining area. Your proposal did not mention permanent ones. Do I able to keep? I need to keep for the long term, but they did not mention of the private property outdoor dining space what I have. Just mentioned about again, this is a new way of lifestyle. Culture is in Europe. It doesn't matter middle of the winter, even raining, cold, everybody eating outside. Luckily, California has a beautiful weather. And if you have awning, if you have a heater, you can eat almost all year long. So I like to move on that direction. My Jason, the Caledonia City Parklet, I do have a physical space to build outdoor dining. However, they don't have it. So only the way to do it, Parklet, if only temporary, how much business owner can invest it to make a nice planter or nice heater or even nice awning. If you make a longer term permit, they will invest it. If you don't know, take away 1 year, 2 year, why you invest it? A lot of business invest in the city, they said no longer. And it's difficult. In Santa Fe, some local business argue with the city give them a permit to keep those parklet. They taking like a 3-car spaces. City council approval on 4th Street, Santa Fe. I think again, this is a way of new businesses. Please, I encourage to do more other dining spaces available in Sausalito. And then another one is your proposal didn't mention about the ABC alcohol license. Michael likes to talk about a little bit, right into guess whatever it is. I think somehow encourage to work with the ABC and what is the rule is. City approval to give them a permit to have a parklet, whatever the stuff do not understanding. I do have a ABC license, the both side outdoor. I got the permit on it. If you without the permit, people got the drunk, people got the accident, you are simply losing your license, your business.
Sir,
Somebody sue you.
sir, your 3 minutes are up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yoshi. Thank you for being here tonight. The next member of the public I see is Jan or Jan Johnson. Welcome. If you don't mind unmuting and sharing your camera. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I just wanted to say for the outside dining, I thought that limiting it to just 2 seated tables is too restrictive. That if the table can seat 4 and still have 5 feet of sidewalk space, that should be allowed. Because I know there's some cafes already that have tables for 4 that have been there for 20 years and the pedestrian traffic is fine. So I'd hate to see them lose their tables for 4 back to tables to 2 because of this rule. And that's all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for your comments and for being here.
You're
Thank you. The next speaker I see is Sandra Bushmaker. Welcome, Sandra.
Hi, hello, everybody. And I will say I'm very impressed with all the work that has been done on this project. The lawyer in me, however, is speaking right at the moment. I think we need to be very, very clear. If we're going to have long-term permits for the business owners, we need to be clear on who owns the city street and that there is no chance for a claim of adverse possession by occupying the land for a period of years. So I think it's a legal issue that we need to have the city attorney opine on and make sure that it's understood that the street parcel is the property of the city and cannot be obtained by a property owner through adverse possession or some other legal theory, which I'm not able to think about at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your comments. The next member of the public I see is Pat. Welcome, Pat. If you could unmute yourself.
Hi. Thank you for doing this. I would urge you, if you're going to do another workshop, to perhaps send a letter out to folks. I think people in town care very much about the kind of dining that's available to them. And I don't know that I knew about this until maybe an hour and a half ago. My bad. I agree with much of what Michael Rex said, up to but not including the point that he advocated turning our parking lots into sidewalks in order to accommodate expanded dining on the sidewalks. I think the city has to look hard at how it uses its assets and what it gives away and what it gets. I don't think that the $1,000 a year parking meter fee is adequate in many parts of town in terms of compensating the city for lost revenue. City has a revenue problem. I do agree with Jan about the notion of not restricting outdoor dining, which is delightful to participate in and see on the sidewalks, to 2 tabletops if they can accommodate 4. And I'd be very concerned with, if I were a business owner, I would want to either obtain or be asked to give permission, if you're going to go forward with parklets, to neighboring businesses to see whether or not it meets with their consent and approval and does not impact their businesses negatively. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you for your comments. Next member of the community I see is Susanna. Welcome, Susanna. If you could unmute yourself.
Hi, thanks very much. First of all, thank you to everyone who worked on this proposal. I think there's been a lot of thought and effort put into it, and I really appreciate that. I'm the owner of Zalta on Caledonia Street. And I would echo what Yoshi and Amy said on the importance of parklets and outdoor dining. And I really think that that's where the future of dining is going, and it's important that Sausalito keeps up. So it's great that we're having this discussion. I think that the requirements for the parklets seem very reasonable for what you proposed, and I'm very glad to hear that most of the parklets won't have to do much work to come into compliance. Thank you for taking into account what's already in place. The only questions I have are about the ABC license, which has already been mentioned, and most of the fees seem reasonable, but I also have questions about the sewer fee, which seems very high. So it would be great if we could look into that. And but overall, I think it seems great, and I really appreciate all the hard work that's been put into it. Thanks.
Thank you, Susanna, and thank you for your comments this evening. I am just looking for any other members of the public that would like to comment or ask questions at this time, so we can pull these together. I'm hearing several different themes, which is good. This is very good. I am not seeing any additional hands at this time. Dan, can you just confirm that for me?
Yeah, I'm looking on I see Yoshi and Pat still up, but I see no other hands.
Okay, okay. Let's go ahead and close public comment at this time. I have taken a couple pages of notes here, and so I'm going to try to whittle these down so into the common themes, let's say, so this working group and this team can respond accordingly. I'm going to start with just alcohol permits and city council and all of that, and ask my colleagues to help chip in here. First of all, if you already have a permit for that alcohol, then you're already done. You don't need another one. There are several under the emergency order. There was a relaxed consideration both by ABC and by the city. So part of what this effort is to bring everything back into conformance and consistency and into the future. So the city council is the body here in Sausalito that grants that outdoor liquor license use. It relies upon the planning commission for a recommendation, but ultimately it's the city council that does approve that and issue that accordingly. So I'm hoping that resolves that. And Dan, anything else to add to that as director of CDD?
No, I concur, exactly.
Okay. So I'm hoping that addresses that. The city does rely on ABC and their guidance for what they approve as well. Should those things change, obviously that would impact the city council as we go forward. So that's the issue with ABC, just for clarity to everybody.
Christina, I got a question. A question just to follow up on the ABC. I'm not a business owner and I don't know much about it, but just maybe to clarify for the rest of us, the ABC license, if a business owner gets it, they can serve that within the restaurant, not the parklet. If they want to serve alcohol in the parklet, they go through city council and planning?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct. That is correct. And thank you for the question to clarify that, just for the benefit of everybody else as well. regarding the fees, I think there have been several comments on sewer. I think on behalf of all of us, I'll just say that that is definitely noted. We absolutely hear you. The sewer was a little bit of a last minute add, and Ali, I'll ask you to maybe elaborate on that a little bit because we did benchmark that.
Yeah, so I'm in Public Works and I work next to Pat Guasco, and I always hear from him how terrible our sewer system is and how much work needs to be done on it on a daily basis. So, and in doing the research for the parklets, I saw that Culver City and LA had a fee for sewer. And that's where that came from. The city, I don't know what the city's numbers are now, or what the fees are now, but the thought was maybe we can help, our sewer systems by taking and charging a little bit of money because of the additional patrons that would be using their bathroom facilities, that there should be an added cost. It's up to discussion on how much that should be.
Okay, thank you. And Teresa, we see your hand there. Just hold on. Bear with us. I am going to get to you and anybody else who's going to want to comment as a follow-up to this, because we do have time this evening. So I definitely see you. I just also want to add to what Ali is saying. Please know that we have all these numbers and these fees we've been conferring with Sausalito's Director of Finance on. She has also recommended, which we have done, consulted with other city staff and resources, including Dan Mike Wagner and Elliot specific on parking parklets and all of that. So we have been working very closely with other people who have a different perspective, but are also in the know from that different perspective. I would like to say that I think we need to revisit this and maybe calibrate it to something more appropriate for Sausalito. And that will be part of our recommendation as well to City Council once we come up with a revised number. But I think it's fair to say that we hear you and we'll take that into consideration. Everything that we've done to date has been with the perspective and in mind that those that currently have parklets and outdoor dining have already invested. And we understand that, and we don't want to, again, be inadvertently punitive or even directly punitive to you. So we hear you and allow us to go a little bit back to the drawing board on that as we go forward. So let's just park that to the side for now, and let me get back through some of these questions. Teresa, I will come back to you. There were some questions regarding accessibility and ADA. And I want to be very clear that this parklet program, or the proposed parklet program and outdoor dining, would be an amendment to our existing Sausalito Municipal Code. And that also reflects the California Building Code and so on. So anything regarding accessibility would have to be to code no matter what. We are not creating any sort of additional ADA or accessibility requirements. We are, those would automatically be adhered to as any building code would need to be. So I would ask Commissioner Luxembourg, President Pierce, if you have anything to add to that comment. You're on mute.
Jeffrey.
I will unmute. I just wanted to add that that all the intent was, and in the document is that all parklets and all outdoor dining will be ADA accessible, so that it will be a requirement and is already in there. Chair Feller, while I have it, can I comment on this question about permanent program, if I could?
Sure.
So the question was asked if somebody's had a parklet for 20 years, if it was permitted through a conditional use or a minor use permit process, that would continue. The parklets that were done under the emergency COVID process would be asked to resubmit for what we're calling a permanent program. But a permanent program means that you'll have an encroachment permit from the city. The land remains the city's, and the sidewalk will still always be the city's. And if for some reason it had a utility problem, it would have to be removed. But there would be an intent that if the business invested in the parklet, that it would be there indefinitely, unlike the emergency provision. So the intent is that it would be a permanent program, but the land will remain the city's, but that would allow a business to make the investment. With regard to the two top tables, the intent there is most of the sidewalks really will only handle the two tops. There are places where four tops work, and there are some that were permitted before COVID. Those would remain. And we're not saying you can't have four tops under a conditional use process. What we're saying is, if you have a business and all you want is a couple simple tables, we're not going to make you go through a conditional use process or minor use process. We're just saying we can give you a simple ministerial process, come in and ask for those tables, and it'd be fast tracked. If you want something more elaborate, then we would require that you go through a conditional use permit process. It's possible there might be some areas where four tops would work and still maintain the 5 feet. In that case, we might be able to tweak this so that we could have a ministerial process for four tops. But the idea was just to maintain that 5 feet of clearance, throughout the downtown and throughout the commercial areas.
Thank you,
I
Commissioner.
hope that clarifies some of those questions. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Commissioner Luxembourg. And just remember, everybody, in the document, we have broken out Sausalito into a number of different neighborhoods, so to speak. And those neighborhoods are, because there are different conditions or different sidewalk depths and so on. I wanted to allow President Pierce from Sausalito Beautiful to comment on any of that as well, as our resident architect.
I think Commissioner Luxembourg captured that very adequately. I did want to mention that there hadn't been any questions regarding green space associated, and obviously there are requirements for planted areas. And I just wanted to go on record saying that that is really as a method of maintaining some beauty in our downtown and adding green space where it may be lost due to planters being blocked on the sidewalk by a new outdoor dining development. But I'd be happy to address any questions that anyone had regarding that as well.
Thank you, Morgan. So moving on here, there was also a question / comment about legal implications of long-term permits or occupation. I just want to mention that this working group in front of you here this evening has been working with the Planning Commission's City Attorney, Sergio Rudin, on looking at this. And prior to that, Mary Wagner, about entering into these sorts of agreements and the language and so on. So what is presented in front of you has been vetted. And so we more recently got some really excellent input from Sergio, and I think that we feel confident with what we have. And I'll ask Dan if he wants to add anything to that as our interim director for CDD.
No, I have nothing to add on to that. I mean, the encroachment agreement and all that should cover all that.
Mhm.
Right.
We have language in it, I'm sure, from that we do existing as well.
Great, thank you. Let's see, what else do we have? I've got a note here about heaters and canopies and the potential of a negative condition because of heaters and canopies. I will note, and I'll ask Morgan if you could add to this, that we specifically were trying to avoid a fully enclosed parklet, and one that certainly had a full roof on it. It sort of defies a little bit of the logic of parklet. We're not trying to create an indoor condition. And so we talk a lot about umbrellas and tencel type of shading. But Morgan, would you like to add to that?
I'm trying to recall the nature of the question. I know there was some concern about heaters in proximity to flammable materials and such. I believe our intent was to allow for some overhead condition. And if so, that there was then a provision to allow for heaters. I'm trying to recall the exact specifics of that. But the intent was if somebody wanted to have some coverage for the rainy weather and some heaters to provide some more comfort, then we wanted to allow for that. But we
Yeah.
didn't want to allow for full enclosure.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that. Let's see, there are a couple other points here we've talked. No one really brought up the issue about the allowed timings for parklets. We've added a little bit in this document about that. I think there was one comment about music and permanence of outdoor dining. And certainly there are existing conditions where music is streamed outside, I should say, but there's certain hours of operation that are acceptable, particularly in the commercial residential zones, mainly along Caledonia, but certainly those conditions can arise in areas of downtown as well. But a large part of Bridgeway is not conducive to parklets, and you'll notice that most of Bridgeway in the downtown, particularly historic area, is not permitted because there's no room for them. So hopefully that addresses that issue. Just to confirm, this is meant to be more of a permanent replacement for the emergency and temporary conditions that accumulated originally due to COVID, but I believe that parklets are here to stay, and outdoor dining and some variation thereof in between to really help create and add to the fabric of our town and not detract from it, which is why you don't see something so prescriptive that it is literally a cookie cutter template, but that there is enough guardrails to what we're proposing that a parklet could still be reflective of your business, which is important. So I will just add that. Let me just ask, is there anything that anyone else heard on the working group that is not being addressed here that you would like to address? Ali, I'll start with you. Is there anything that you would like to add?
No, I think we've talked about it. If something else comes up, we can talk about it. I think one item was the $1,000 per parking stall. Again, we could talk to Elliot to see where the numbers came from, if those were sufficient.
Okay, very good. We can do that. Morgan, anything else to add, to clarify, or add to what you've heard from our community?
I mean, I think the only thing I understand that, and I think Jeffrey outlined this, is that these are intended to encourage the business owners to provide more carefully thought out, more semi-permanent solutions, but with the understanding that the land would remain in the ownership of the city, and should some other provision in the future require their removal, that would be up to the city. But in an ideal world, that wouldn't happen. And so the intent is to provide opportunities for the business owners to do the best possible job they can and create less temporary looking and temporary functioning spaces, and something that's more complementary to our beautiful streetscapes.
Great. Can you just maybe elaborate a little bit on some of the materials, even though we don't have a slide for that? We're specifically looking for more porous type of platforms, so sewage cannot be obstructed and so on.
Right. I think, obviously there's a wide array of materials I think that we've sort of outlined as ideal, and they're durable woods, there's stones, there's concrete, there's metal. And really the intent is to simplify a lot of the maintenance issues that the city's encountering now, but also provide some latitude for the business owner to provide something that's both durable and hopefully complementary to their business. I think we very deliberately made this so we didn't have everything looking alike going downtown, because not every storefront looks alike. We don't want this to be, we don't want to create a homogeneous street look for these units. And so the intent is to allow for some flexibility, but also restrict it to some flexible material or some durable materials that will allow for some longevity and hopefully some beauty.
Great. Thank you for that. Thank you for the clarification. Commissioner Luxembourg, do you want to add anything?
The only thing I want to add, and we have a 45-page report and all that kind of thing, is our real intent is to streamline this process to replace the emergency program, that we want to support the local businesses. We understand they've had a tough time with the COVID epidemic, and that we do support both outdoor dining and parklets as a way to enliven the community. And we think that they are an asset to the community, and we hope that these guidelines make sure that they stay an asset and are attractive and are a benefit to the community. So
thank you.
Summary.
Thank you. Dan, do you have anything to add? I'm going to open this back up to public comment since we have the time, and we definitely have some good dialogue and ideas from our community. But would you like
I think that's the only thing I have to add, is that this is very encouraging, this dialogue tonight. So I'm taking copious notes, like I said, so go ahead and open it up.
Good, good. Thank you. Thank you for helping us take copious notes here. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open this back up to public comment. You've heard some clarification from everybody, maybe some explanation, but let's keep it going. Teresa, you've been so patient with your hand up there. Let's go ahead and ask you to unmute if you could, and the floor is yours.
So I guess I just wanted to readdress the issue of the sewer fees as both business owner and property owner. So I pay a high sewer fee, and I know, Pat, and the sewer system, I understand, is in very bad shape. And I do understand that it does need repair, and that there are still like ceramic pipes, and there's a lot of issues with the sewer system. And, we've gone through like 10 years of increases in sewer fees. So I think we pay a pretty high sewer fee as property owner, and then to pay maybe a $631 sewer fee also. I don't know if that's annual or monthly, I don't remember now. But to the business owner, I don't know, maybe it seems like a little bit of a double dip kind of situation. And the sewer fee is based on water consumption. So, we pay the water bill, and then we pay our sewer fee based on how much water the business consumes. So when we increased our business, when we added the parklet, that also increased our sewer fees because more water does get utilized as you increase the business. So I don't know, I think perhaps more needs to be looked into concerning that particular aspect of the fee.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So, thank you very much. We hear that loud and clear from you and several others, so thank you. I see BF Green, so
Yeah.
welcome, sir. I'm not sure your
No,
first
thank
name.
you. Yeah, it's Bob Freeman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a question. How, and Michael Rex maybe can chime in on this one. How do the extra seating calculate into the need for lavatories? Seems to me that the plumbing code has, numbers associated with seats to lavatories. So has that been taken into consideration anywhere?
I can just comment on that, Chair
Well,
Fowler.
let's go ahead and get everyone's comment like we did before. We're going to come back to Mr. Freeman. It's a good question. Do you have any other questions or comments?
No, I like the program. It all seems good. A few tweaks here and there, but it sounds like things have been addressed.
Okay.
But I just know that there are accounts associated. I wondered if that had been taken into account. Is that extra $600 some bucks a seat? That does sound high, but then again, who knows?
It's a great question. Thank you. Bear with us. We're going to get through a couple more public comments, and then Commissioner Luxembourg is going to get into some detail
Good.
on the
Thank you.
response. So thank you, sir. Pat, welcome back. I see you are the next hand in the audience.
Yes, thank you. I didn't read the report. I apologize for that. I'm wondering if there has been an analysis or any kind of projection done as to how a broad townwide program might impact the broad town. In other words, is it possible that every other store on Caledonia Street, for example, would want a parklet? Or how about going down Bridgeway? I'm curious as to an impact analysis of what you foresee happening and whether or not you're interested in putting any guardrails around that, number one. Number two, I know that in town we have, whether or not people like it, a shared parking model system with virtual parking downtown. And these additional seats might generate additional parking demand under the Harrelson fictitious parking model. Maybe it's time to throw that out and just say, have at it, everybody, never mind parking. I don't know, but I don't know that that was addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Any other questions or comments from anybody at this time before we get into some unraveling some of this and discussing it further? Okay, I don't see anybody. So just the issue about the sewer fee, we hear you loud and clear. So leave that with us and allow us to revise that. I think it's a very fair comment that we've heard from many, and Teresa is championing here. So thank you for that. So let's go ahead. Commissioner Luxembourg, over to you. Let's talk about lavatories, head count, and that issue.
Yeah, the document does indicate that the building, as part of the review, the building department will look at the facilities of the businesses to support the number of tables and chairs. So that would be part of the review process to make sure there's adequate restroom facilities as approval of any either parklet or outdoor dining. So in the outdoor dining case, for the ministerial program, the number of tables relative to the number of inside seats is generally pretty small. Other outdoor dining, which would go through a conditional use process, that review of the number of lavatories would be part of that analysis as well. So that would be covered. So to the other comment about parking, and we did look at, as Chair Feller indicated, the whole city in the different neighborhoods and groupings of the commercial districts, and there are whole sections where there are no parking spaces on Bridgeway. So if there's no parking spaces, there can't be parklets. So there are some constrained areas. I think that there's a number that were approved under emergency situation that we would try to put into the permanent situation. As I said, permanent means they have an encroachment permit and the land stays public. And then there might be some new ones. I do not think, but in our analysis as we benchmark this, that there will be wholesale parklets on every street in every place all over the city. I don't think that's realistic, and that's not what we think is going to happen. So I think that fear is, if that was a fear, is a little bit unfounded. So those, I think, were the last questions.
Yeah. So just following on the latter in regards to the impact analysis, that's why we have, just to be clear, that's why we've broken these areas, or the city, I should say, into these different neighborhoods, and there are 8 different neighborhoods. There are many areas that it's just inappropriate or dangerous, not just because there are no parking spaces, but parts of the historic downtown have very narrow sidewalks. They're bike lanes. There are no parking, street parking spaces, and it's quite congested and chaotic at certain times of the year. I will also note, although outside the purview of this particular exercise, the Planning Commission has issued and requested on multiple occasions for a comprehensive parking analysis and plan and strategy to be done throughout the city as part of a larger master plan. And so we are awaiting funding on that. We do think that's critical. Again, that is not part of this analysis. And I will also be clear that parklets or that type of thing is not just for restaurants. If there is some type of a retail store that feels that they can justify the use of an outdoor parklet area, they are welcome to apply for it. I just want to be clear, we always think of them as restaurants, but we are not limiting them to just restaurants if there's a justification and a need to that. I'm just by a show of hands to the working group, but anyone else want to add anything to these issues? No, okay. Yes, Mr. Freeman, you've had your hand up. Was there another question?
No, that's good. I'm sorry, I didn't take it down. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, thank you. Let's go ahead and open this up for some further public comment so everybody has the opportunity. I see Yoshi has his hand up. If you could unmute yourself. Thank you.
Again, my adjacent to Caledonia Street, that's a one-way street. It's wonderful. Those are corner areas, when pickup time come to pickup time, maybe they can accommodate to look into those pickup zone, green zones.
So Yoshi, if I'm understanding that, you're looking for some kind of incorporation of pickup zones for takeout. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Neighbors, instead of permanent parking, 5 to 7 o'clock, like green zones, 20 minutes, whatever, that may help to all the neighborhood, everybody, instead of traffic jams.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Vicky, welcome back. If you could unmute.
Hi there. I just want to be clear. I just heard Yoshi. This is a discussion about parklets, not a reconfiguration of the traffic direction on Caledonia. Is that correct?
To be clear, Caledonia Street is a pilot program that the City Council has implemented and not necessarily directly part of this larger proposed program.
Right. I just want to be very clear. We have had these conversations from the beginning, and this is not an emergency or a parklet issue. This is about circulation. So please, let's not conflate the two or even say it, because I'm under the understanding that that was made clear.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jan, welcome back. If you could unmute yourself.
Hi, stupid question, but who pays to build these parklets?
Okay.
Is it the city or the people who are going to be using it?
Well, it's definitely not a stupid question. And I'm answering because I don't see another hand raised, so I'll go ahead and answer that. This is for the applicant, which would be a business owner. It is their responsibility to issue an application with their proposed design as it relates to this proposed program, which would be a ministerial fast track process. Should an owner elect to submit something that is outside of this proposed program, then it triggers a regular design review permit process.
Yes, but who pays to build it?
The applicant.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Teresa, did you have your hand up? No, I didn't. Okay. I don't see that. I don't see any other hands at this time. Vicky, your hand is still up, but I'm assuming that was from before. If you could just kindly confirm or lower your hand. Okay, got it.
Sorry about that. Thank you.
No, okay, it's okay. Okay. Any other comments from the public at this time? We have, I mean, what we might have lacked in numbers, we have well made up for some really, really critical, substantive input. And it's impressive. And I want to thank everybody for that. Just giving anyone a chance to raise their hand again. Okay, I'll go ahead and close public comment at this time and then try to recap here as best I can. And I know that the rest of the working group will chime in here if I am lacking. I guess, first of all, just from a comment standpoint, again, this working group was convened at the direction of City Council to staff, and staff requested the other volunteer members here, myself, Commissioner Luxembourg, Morgan Pierce, to participate in this working group. So the City Council, so we're here on behalf of the City Council for a program that they would like to replace the emergency order and implement a permanent parklet and outdoor dining program. Outdoor dining is already allowed through a ministerial minor use permit. However, now that we're looking at these two things together, we just want to be thoughtful. We're not taking away that minor use permit. We are just looking at these things comprehensively to make smart decisions and recommendations to the City Council and to our city. So anything outside of that is not necessarily the purview of this working group. This will go back to City Council. I think Ali sort of went through sort of the next steps. This will go back to the City Council. We've taken a lot of notes here from at least 10 different speakers, so thank you again for that. The highest on the list that we really have to look at, just because I think it's maybe the most substantial, is the sewer fees. That is not the only thing. I think we need to make sure that certain elements are clear in the document based on your first impressions of reading it or even perusing it. So that's really important feedback to us who have been staring at it and editing it for quite some time. So thank you for that. We will confirm hours of operation. We will look back at the 2-top versus the 4-top. Again, it gets very difficult in most of the parts of town because we have very narrow sidewalks. It will be constrained because of the size of the sidewalk. But maybe we put, you know, the 5-foot clear, bar none, and then, you know, and that will dictate the 2-top or the 4-top. As we said, we've conferred with the Director of Finance. We've conferred with our City Attorney, Sergio Rudin. We have looked at impact. The issue about neighbor approval, I think we need to chew on that a little bit. I don't know what the metric would be about that. Since this is a citywide program that would be approved and implemented through the Sausalito Municipal Code, through a ministerial process. And so I think we'll go back to the drawing board. We will codify our notes here and issue those as part of our final product to the City Council. And hopefully, I'm looking at the rest of the working group here, that could be done prior to the August recess. So we can get that done and issued to the City Council, and how they agendize that in their hearings is up to their agenda setting committee, for which we are not part of that, but we are hoping that they will be involved in that. And of course, they will, they know that we're meeting tonight, and hopefully look at the recording when we're done. Commissioner Luxembourg, any final thoughts or comments?
No, I think we will take all those comments and try to address them and resolve some of the fee issues, and then assemble this back with the mechanics of how the City Council could approve it and for a permanent process. So.
Okay. President Pierce, any final thoughts or comments?
Nothing aside from just to thank the members of our business community and our residential community for taking part today and helping us to guide this important document. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And our engineer, our DPW engineer, Ali Iqbal, any other thoughts about this, since some of this really does affect DPW?
No, but I will take back the color curve, but that's something that I need to clarify, whether if it's a discretionary or that we're gonna, kind of not allow that at that time. So that's something I got to look into.
Okay. All right, let's add that to our list of notes here. I've got it in mine. I'm sure Dan has it in his.
Yeah.
Good. And Interim Director Horter, would you like to, any final thoughts or comments from you?
I just want to thank everybody that came, whether it was short notice or you have plenty of time. I really appreciate your time here today. And I think we got some really thoughtful feedback.
Great, thank you. I too thank you, everybody. Thank you, business community. Thank you, residents, our community. Please feel free, if you have any additional thoughts in the next week or so, if you could kindly direct those to Dan Hortert, our interim director for CDD. He will ensure that it's circulated to the rest of us. And all of his contact details are on the city website. And I appreciate everybody's time. So I think we can adjourn here, and with great thanks. Thank you, everybody. Have a
Thank
good
you.
day.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.